Good morning, Sharhabeel Alzaeem. Thanks for being with us this morning in this intimate event to speak about Gaza and about the conditions that Gaza has been facing for the previous year, the recent years. It's a great honor and pleasure to have you with us today. I'm extremely grateful for this openness to speak here via Zoom at the University of Haifa. And I wanted to start us off just by asking you to share with us something about yourself, who you are, your day-to-day work, your experience as a lawyer and as a citizen and as a person who is involved politically in the situation in Gaza and in the Palestinian sphere more generally.
Good morning, and thank you, Itamar, and greetings for all the participants, whether via Zoom or attending the event in Haifa in person. My name is Sharhabeel Alzaeem. I'm a Palestinian born in Gaza in 1959 for a family originally from Gaza. And afterwards, I got my studies in Egypt. I traveled to Egypt in 1977, where I studied at Alexandria University. Afterwards, I traveled to the United Kingdom for 1 year for further studies. Worked in United Arab Emirates and then in Yemen, and returned in Gaza in 1987. 10 years outside the country, returned soon after my return, the first Intifada started, and I started defending Palestinian detainees in the Israeli military courts. Defended almost 1,000 detainees, and then I was asked to join the Palestinian delegation for the peace talks in Madrid, and afterwards in Washington, D.C., where the Israeli and Palestinian start the dialogue and negotiation, although the real negotiation was in Europe, in Oslo.
Sorry.
Afterwards, I've started a commercial practice after getting my training in New York, and then we became, in very few years, the largest law firm in West Bank and Gaza. And today we are still maintain that category as the largest. We have been classified as the best by Chambers and Partners since 1996 till today. That's my...
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just going to welcome the friends that just arrived and people via Zoom who may want to turn their cameras on. And I'm also just going to say something about the format of this conversation. I'm going to do this as an interview, but anyone who has a question on their side from here or from home is welcome to join. We're just a few people, so we can have this as a kind of conversation. Your work today is I would guess is no longer mainly on detainee issues. As you said, it's a commercial practice, and I was curious, what does it mean to be a commercial lawyer in Gaza? What kind of cases do you deal with on a day-to-day basis? What courts do you engage? What other public authorities or private entities you engage? If you can share with us some of your professional experience.
Well, as a commercial lawyer in Gaza, we are dealing with many cases, most of our clients are in either the large companies, commercial companies like telecommunication, power. We don't represent authorities or any official bodies, but we do represent most of the INGOs, the international non-governmental organizations. At a certain stage, particularly in 1994 and onwards, we represented several Israeli banks who used to lend people from Gaza, and when the Israeli withdrawal or the signing of Oslo Accords in Washington in September '93 took place, many of those lenders were not anymore under jurisdiction in Israel. Therefore, we start to follow them up and file claims in courts in Gaza on behalf of Israeli banks. So many of our clients till now, whether in Israel or in the international arena, who have business in Gaza. It's a very interesting environment, very difficult to work nowadays, particularly after 2007, 2008, when Hamas took over the authority in Gaza, and they reformed the courts with their own judges, and they started to issue new laws and regulations which become different than the laws and regulations in West Bank. So we are dealing in a very unique environment where sometimes you need to lean to ADR or alternate dispute resolution like mediation or arbitration because you don't want to deal with the authorities, or one of the clients cannot deal with the authorities because of the no contact policy.
Can you please explain just that last term? I'm not sure that everyone knows what that means.
The no contact policy is a policy that had been adopted by the United States and the EU and many other countries, that they have no contacts with the de facto authority in Gaza or Hamas authority in Gaza, which means that they cannot lean to their courts, they cannot file any request for registration in Gaza, which is making our life as lawyers very difficult, I would say. But we are managing through different means and ways to accommodate the client's request as well as the law on the ground.
Is it correct to conclude from your comments that the law on the ground in Gaza and the domestic Palestinian legal system in Gaza and in the West Bank is today completely a different one?
That's true. It's completely different, with different setup, different judges, different appointing authorities, and even there are now different laws, not in every jurisdiction, but for instance, the commercial law, companies law, civil law, the part of the landlord and tenant law, most of it are completely different from each other. So we have two different jurisdictions, I would say, one in Gaza and one in West Bank, with different judiciary and different laws.
And just to a final clarification on that particular issue, to what extent does the domestic law in Gaza reflect the Sharia today?
Believe it or not, it's not related to Sharia, and you cannot find any article in any of the new proclamated laws by the Legislative Council in Gaza that lean to Sharia. Nothing. It's completely secular, and mainly it used to be drafts prepared by the Palestinian Authority pre-2007, and those laws were not passed by the Palestinian Authority at that time for different political reasons, and now Hamas just adopt those laws and made them as laws. So you cannot find anything related to Islamic law or Sharia within the laws. It is worth mentioning that they have issued certain regulation, which, for instance, prohibit dealing with alcohol. So you cannot find any restaurant, for instance, in Gaza that would serve alcohol at all, or any bar that can sell alcohol. So there are certain regulations which would make it look like that they are adopting Sharia, but in a very, very tiny areas.
Okay. All right. So for a more general, that was fascinating. Thank you. For a more general point, I guess it's important to just put on the table what are the most fundamental and important problems facing Gaza population today, in your opinion?
Wow. Well, I can say many, but the closure is the main problem that we are facing on daily basis. You can imagine at a certain point there were only 1,000 permits for the 2.3 million people who are living in Gaza. You can imagine that those 1,000 who just can leave Gaza to cross to Jordan or to go to West Bank or to Israel. Nowadays, it's 20,000 permits, all in all, including laborers, business people, and sick people who are trying to get treatment in the West Bank or in Israel. So in general, the closure and the inability of or the lack of freedom of movement for people and goods are one of the fundamental issues that we are facing on daily basis. At certain point, the CLA or the Israeli authorities controlling Gaza, which is part of the COGAT, they limited the number of trucks and the certain issues that can get into Gaza. So I can remember very well in 2009, 2010, the allowed items to get into Gaza were only 40 items. So soft drinks was not part of it, for instance. So you cannot get 7-Up or Coca-Cola or juice or anything in Gaza. And one day, Mr. Tony Blair was my guest. He came as the head of the quartet into Gaza, and I invited him to lunch at my home. And because we have no tissues at that time, I put a toilet paper on the table and I said, Mr. Blair, we do have a table manner, but we having problems getting tissues from Israel, and therefore allow me to put this on the table, and asked, does tissues endanger the security of Israel? I said, would you please ask this to the Minister of Defense, who control the border of Gaza? So we do have problems in what's so-called dual use. I'm not defending Hamas. I'm not part of Hamas, just for everybody to know. And probably I had my own problems with Hamas at a certain point. But once I said it to our President, Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, and to many others, if few people kidnap a bus or an airplane with many passengers, can we kill all the passengers because we don't want to feed the kidnappers or the hijackers? Few people hijacking, if you wish, the place, and they are not outsiders. They were elected, and you have an election today. You had election a few weeks ago, and this election brought some people from the extreme right. Can we consider Israel in the same position? The answer is no. This is a free election. If you want the election, you should accept the outcome of the election. Hamas was elected, yes. Hamas is not part of the PLO or not part of or not in line with the international terms, but it doesn't mean to punish all the Gaza inhabitants, 2.3 million people, to be punished because of 50,000 people. They are in top of the lead at this stage.
Yes, I think that one thing that we not many of us know, and is important to clarify, following up on your answer, is to what extent is the closure on dual-use, so-called dual-use products in place today? And what are the ramifications of the closure at this point in time, right now? I guess there was changes and fluctuations over the years, and we want to know what exactly is the situation today with the closure.
It's I believe that the Israeli authorities start to ease the closure a bit. The dual-use issues. Dual-use term is used by the Israelis that any item can be used to produce weapons or be used for a civil, like, for instance, certain materials, pipes. For instance, if it is steel pipes, it's not allowed into Gaza because that might be used for water or for making rockets. So this is a dual-use item, and it's not allowed. Wood at certain time was not allowed to get into Gaza because it can be used for building tunnels or for carpentry. So either or. Now, the list are shrinking, okay? And we are allowed to import more and more issues. Just for those who do not know Gaza very well, Gaza used to import goods and merchandise around $3 billion per year from Israel. Now this number had went down, I think, to less than $1.2 billion per year. So we are talking about less than 60% or 40% out of what we used to import. Part of it because it's not allowed, and the other part because of the poverty of the people, that the consumption had minimized to a certain extent.
Yes. Yeah. When in a previous conversation that we had preparing this this conversation, you reminded me of the declaration 7 years ago, I believe by a UN agency, that Gaza will no longer be inhabitable in 5 years due to the quality of water. So and you said here we are still 7 years after, 2 years after that was supposed to expire, and we're still living here. Can you say something about this issue of the quality of water and this kind of situation with resources?
2015 or 16, I think the UN had issued a report saying that almost 90% of the Gaza water either polluted or so salty to the extent that Gaza will be uninhabitable place by 2020. The international community, particularly EU and some Arab countries, had donated 3 desalination plants, 3 small plants in Gaza, north, middle, and south, and they are pumping the desalinated water into the pipes, mixing it with the salty water to make it less salty or can be used. The vast majority of the population are using that water. The minority, I would say, cannot drink it, and they use bottled water, like mineral water or so. But the water is very polluted. As I said, 90% of the wells in Gaza polluted water because of the lack of projects in regard to sewage and wastewater, which make the whole water in Gaza polluted, or 90% of it. We do share the same beach, and sometimes, unfortunately, municipalities, because of lack of electricity, pumping the sewage into the sea, and even this had affected Ashkelon or the area, the kibbutzim and areas near to Gaza, because the pollution of the seawater had reached the shores of southern Ashkelon. So sometimes the problem we have may cross the border, because in case if these problems are they don't need permits to cross.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to open it soon to questions. So if anyone has any, anything to ask or to comment, I'll be very happy. I do have more questions myself, and I think that it would be interesting to address a little bit the relationship between the authorities, Hamas authorities in Gaza and PA authorities in Ramallah. What is the situation today in terms of the contact between them, and how does that affect Palestinian life?
Okay. If no one has any different question, I would answer Itamar's question.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe first this question.
Okay. I mean.
We have.
Okay. So we'll go. Can we go ahead with this question and then open?
Okay. The life in Gaza and how it's affected by the relation between Hamas and Fatah, or PA, and de facto authority. At the time being, the relation is almost minimal. They only share a few things in regard to education, particularly the curriculum and the examination of schools. Apart from that, the relation is very limited. Still, the Palestinian Authority pay the salaries of their employees who used to be employed by the Palestinian Authority, and they were asked in 2007, after June 2007, to stay at home and not to work or not to go to their work. Their salaries will be guaranteed. This was an attempt by the Palestinian Authority to paralyze the life in the public sector for Hamas in order not to control. Unfortunately or fortunately, Hamas started very weak, but now I can say they grew up, and they are doing their public sector not to the satisfaction of the people, but yet they are doing it. For instance, security inside Gaza, we feel secure. We don't. I mean, no theft, no robbery, no. You can feel that you are living a normal life. That's one side, which is important. But for the services Hamas is providing, or the de facto authority is providing, the minimal services in this part of the world. The relation, sometimes they meet. Last time they met in Algeria, they try to talk, bridge the gap. I'm one of those who keep trying, and I hope that I will not stop trying to find the bridges between the Palestinian Authority and the de facto authority in order to end this miserable situation between Gaza and West Bank. But life is difficult. For instance, if you are living in Gaza and you traveled abroad, once you left Gaza, then the authority who is controlling your life and in Gaza cannot provide you any service outside Gaza. I cannot go to any Palestinian embassy and say, I have this birth certificate issued by Hamas, and I want to add my or amend my passport. Or if I do so, they do not recognize the certificate issued by Hamas. The Palestinian Authority doesn't recognize anything issued by Hamas. So there are a complicated process on the day-to-day life that you need to have each and every document, which is for you. Sometimes you just receive it by mail. We need to get it authenticated and then go to Ramallah, issue another certificate in order to be able to use it outside. You cannot apply for a permit. If I want to apply for a permit to cross the borders from Gaza, Israel doesn't recognize Hamas, and therefore they do not deal with Hamas. Accordingly, the Palestinian Authority had an office in Gaza which would allow the people to apply for permits for the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority would take the permits to the Israeli authorities. So there are day-to-day complications which make our life very difficult. And those who are lucky can travel outside Gaza. Sometimes you need to register if you want to cross through Egypt. You need to register 6 months earlier in order to get your turn on the row in order to be able to travel. It's very, very tiring, 2, sometimes 3 days trip between Cairo and Gaza, which need only 6 hours drive.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So we have a question from Yael. Dr. Yael Balda is a sociologist and a lawyer at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem.
Thanks so much. I have a question about the changes in the last 2 years regarding permits for workers from Gaza. And I wanted to ask, because after the full closure, besides a few hundred permits that were for humanitarian cases, there was a significant jump. At first, it was in 2021 to about 1,000 permits, and then it went up to 15,000 at some point. And of course, it's Israeli numbers, so it's hard to know what really goes on. But it's 35,000 people at certain laborers crossed from Gaza into Israel to work. Do you feel that difference? Is that something that is does it have like this a social and economic impact that you can actually see? Is the bureaucracy around it very busy, or is this something that is only pertaining to such a small number that it doesn't affect most people? Could you just give us an idea of how so the kind of the tiny opening of the siege, how does that affect?
Okay, that's a very, very important question, and thank you for bringing this issue. Until now, the official number of permits for workers is 17,000, and nothing. It doesn't reach. We hope that it will reach 35,000, but it is at the time being 17,000. Those are permits issued for the people, but unfortunately, the part of those permits are not given for laborers. They are given for either PA staff or for other people to do things other than working in Israel. Whether the number of workers who are working in Israel made any change on the social, economical life in Gaza, the answer is definitely yes. And there is a difference. We can feel it, we can see it. I have been asked this question by the British representative or the British Consul General in Jerusalem. And I told her, yes, the glass, if it is completely empty, one drop of water will make a difference, and you can immediately see it. And that's the effect of the actual number is almost 9,000 workers. That's what I have been told by Ministry of Labor Gaza, and was confirmed by CLA. But there is a big difference between the number of permits and number of actual workers. The other point, that because those people does not have any kind of assurances that they will keep their work for quite a long period. The permit is for 3 months, and they are not guaranteed to be renewed. The permits will be renewed, but not for the same person. So they will keep 17,000, for instance, but each 3 months, it's a different people who get the permits. And sometimes they are the same people. This makes the workers, when they get back with their pay, not to spend all their money. And this is why it does not they do not inject all the money into the market in order to improve the economical circle in the Gaza Strip. Part of it, they will save it, and part of it, they will settle some debts or loans they have. And this is why I suggested to Mr. Moshe Tetro, the head of CLA in Gaza, that give the people, give the worker the feeling that they are permanent, give them the feeling that they can work as long as they are having no problems. They can keep their permits and they can keep their work. At that stage, the worker will feel safe and secure to spend more money, and the outcome or the results that Israel would look for is to improve the economical life in Gaza would be seen tangible results. I hope that this answer your question.
We have a question from Karin Levy. Dr. Karin Levy is a legal scholar at NYU, New York University.
Hi, thank you. Very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for talking to us. So I have two questions. One is about the history of the closure, or the history of the situation we are in today. And another is something more contemporary. So about the closure. So you were talking about the situation that's going on. Basically, we know that it's 15 years now, right? That since this blockade or closure. But before that, there was closure in the 90s and just before the disengagement. And can you tell us something about if you remember, the kind of the different experiences of closure from then and now? That's the first question. And the second question is about academia, about academic studies or higher education in Gaza. What is the situation for students? I know there are some students who are allowed to leave, but not to academic institutions in the West Bank, but maybe to study abroad. What are the academic institutions within Gaza? What is the kind of the situation for students and people who want to pursue higher education in Gaza today?
Okay, thank you. I lived in Gaza since I was born, and I know the life under the Egyptian administration. And then in the beginning, when Israel occupied the Gaza Strip, I remember very well the era of the 70s. And I'm one of those who used to go to Ashkelon almost 3-4 times a week because the movies in Ashkelon cinemas were much better than the movies in Gaza cinemas at that time. So I'm one of the generation who lived the life by its simplicity with Israel. I had many friends at that time from Israel. We used to go even sometimes to Tel Aviv for dinner, and I so many times had left the period where air's checkpoint did not exist. It was exactly, you hardly can notice that you have crossed Gaza or the borders of Gaza because you can see the industrial state, which is called Erez at that time. So later on, after the 1994, there was a proper, I would say, checkpoint where we used to queue on cars in order to cross, and we were allowed to drive in Israel. I had 3-4 tickets driving in Israel because either of a seatbelt or because of speed. But we used to live normally in Israel. In 2000, when the Intifada, second Intifada started, new, let's say, orders, military orders started to be in place, and we were prevented from traveling into Israel by cars. So they imposed, the first closure was imposed for traveling by car from Gaza to cross Israel to go to West Bank. Still, you can drive, and this is, but you cannot take your car out. Today, I'm not allowed to drive in Israel. It's mentioned on the permit, not allowed to drive in Israel. Between 2000 and 2005 or 6, there were many restrictions to be added on probably every 6 months or a year to restrict the number of people that they can cross. The waiting time start to increase. It used to take 2-3 minutes. Later on, start to be half an hour, and so on. In 2005, when Israeli decide to vacate Gaza from all settlements or to withdraw from Israel, from Gaza completely, we start to feel that there are more and more restrictions imposed on Gaza until 2007. When Hamas took over, Gaza was completely closed, and afterwards announced as an area, I'm trying to remember the term used there, I think it was called hostile entity. They announced Gaza as a hostile entity, and this we are suffering from that announcement or that military order until today. I cannot get any payment from any client in Israel, for instance, through bank transfer, because banks cannot transfer directly or accept any transfer from Gaza banks, although the same bank had a branch in West Bank, and they can accept transfer from and to Israel. So closure had affected our life and gradually, it's true, but after 2007, it became very difficult. Since almost 2 years, I would say it started to ease up. We are hoping that we will get back to normal, and this is something I believe it can be done, but we need to prepare ourselves in both sides, psychologically before physically, that we need to live with each other as neighbors, as hopefully good in good terms. As for your second question regarding the academia or academic life in Gaza, yes, the students cannot study in West Bank universities unless Mr. Mann help them. Of course, Geisha, as an organization trying to assist in getting permits through their own work, either by getting in touch with the Israeli proper authorities, sometimes filing appeals to the High Court in order to make sure that people would get permits to travel, to enhance their studies in West Bank universities. I have my own experience. My daughter in 2012 was supposed to go and study. She was accepted to study law in Birzeit. She was not allowed. She was not given a permit, although I, as a person, very well known to the Israeli authorities, that I'm one of the I can say the minority in Gaza who kept fighting for peace by all means, trying to work with the Palestinian from both sides, with the Israeli authorities, in order to normalize the life, but yet my daughter was not given the permit to study. She studied in Gaza, and afterwards she did her master in London at SOAS University. Today there are 18 universities in Gaza, some of which are public and some are private, and the number of students, of graduates we have is very high, more than the market need. and therefore 7 out of each graduates are unemployed. One of the 3 who are working in different fields than their studies. So you end up with a very high rate of graduates, a very low rate of employed graduates, and that's part of our problems in this part of the world, that we have a very high rate of unemployment.
Thank you, Sharhabeel. I will take one last question for today, which is Dr. Hadil Abu Hussein, who's with us as a postdoctoral researcher right now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate that. I have 2 technical questions. The first of all is the one related to the students and the Gaza universities, because I'm aware of that the Ministry of Education has kind of also separated the universities of Gaza and West Bank. So the student graduated from Gaza will have recognition at the universities in West Bank. Let's assume if they got the permit in order to travel to the West Bank, because once I tackled the problem to support one of the students that they couldn't study in the West Bank due their graduation, like they didn't recognize the degree from the Gaza University. And the second is, apart from that, also related to the separation. If you want to go to the High Court, the Court of Appeal, is that 2 separated courts currently due to the situation between Gaza and West Bank? As technical lawyer questioning, is there Supreme Court, and who's like the last word for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, at certain point, the ministry, all universities in Gaza should be recognized from the Ministry of Higher Education in West Bank. Otherwise, the certificates itself would mean nothing. And therefore, certain, I would say, programs in certain colleges are not approved yet. They are filing for approval, and the Ministry of Higher Education have their own conditions in order to approve these programs. But in general, all the 18 universities in Gaza are recognized by the Ministry of Higher Education. Not all their programs, still a part of the programs are not approved yet. And in my opinion, this is something normal, since you cannot, you need to wait for the permit. It's true that there are some bureaucracy in there, but I think this cannot be considered a huge problem. For your second question in regard to yes, ma'am, we have a High Court of Justice, and we have administrative court in Gaza. There are completely two separate systems. You cannot even appeal. You cannot appeal a decision taken from Gaza to West Bank. Even you cannot enforce any court decision taken in any of the jurisdiction in the other jurisdiction. It's easier to enforce the decision in other countries, like in Jordan, you can enforce the West Bank court decision, and you can enforce a Gaza decision, but in West, not enforce Gaza decision at the time being. So it is two separate. Let me. I hope that I answered your question. I want to conclude by thanking you for this chance, for a voice from Gaza to be here. And in behalf of all Gazans, I would like to say that probably the vast majority, and if not all, are looking for a normal life with the Israelis. We do recognize that there are certain differences, but in the end, we are all human, living in the same area, wish to have our own human rights, and hoping to live side by side. And I wish if we can invite you to spend a weekend in Gaza. Believe me, the beach in Gaza is wonderful. We do cook the fish differently. It's kosher. So you are. Let's hope that we will work together to make this happen. I remember very well in the 70s and 80s, many Israelis would come for shopping. They used to buy their vegetables and coming for restaurants, and we used to do the same in Israel. So let's look forward to improve our life by our hands.
Sharhabeel, I can't tell you how deeply we appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. It's very special, and it's something that almost never, or perhaps never happens really on campuses over here, that we speak with someone of your prominence and your experience from the Gaza Strip. It's a great, great honor, and I can only repeat the wish from the beginning of the conversation that we will have the next meeting in face-to-face here in Haifa, where we would love to have you, to have your family, to at some point, I mean, maybe if it will be possible, we just want to continue this conversation and continue to talk. And we learned so very much from you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and I'd like to make special thanks to my friend Professor Kenneth Mann, who hosted me at his home in Herzliya. I spent a night at his home, and I will always remember that night, and I'm very proud of our friendship. Thank you.
Well, I just want to express my appreciation for Sharhabeel. I can say that he is a very distinctive person. You can certainly understand that from the way he speaks, but I think more than anything, he's courageous, and his speaking with us today is an expression of his, way I understand it, of his commitment to having connections with Israelis and, where it's possible, working together. So thank you. Thank you, Bill, for being that way and for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so مع السلامة. شكرا. يعطيك العافية.
Thank you.